Hello, Milledgeville. We are back for another year, the highlight on 95.3 WGUR The Noise.
Yes, we are back. We're happy to be back. We're excited for a new year in sports and everything else that goes on around the sports world every day. So I'm just ready to jump right back into it. How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, we have a great show planned for you guys today. We got to making a script and we were thinking, there's too much college football. It has to just be a college football preview. So that's what we're going to do today. Strictly college football, with college football starting this weekend. We do have a guest. His name is Tom Brady. Of course, that's a joke. I wish. Let's jump right into it.
Yeah, so we got Grayson Lambert named the starting quarterback for Georgia. Is he the guy that's going to lead the Dogs this year? Is he going to take them all the way to the national playoff, or will somebody else emerge and take over the starting job? A couple weeks in. What do you think about that, Kyle?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be the guy that's going to lead them to a national championship. I think they're a few years off of that, but I do think he's the right man for the job. Bryce Ramsey, Fatan Bada have been in the program for 3 and 4 years respectively, and both of them had all spring to win the job. They had all spring to show what they could do in front of new offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. But Grayson Lambert came in this summer. It was a close competition, and he won the job. And I think that just proves that he's the right man for the job, or maybe it says that either Bryce Ramsey and Fatan Bada just didn't deserve it. But I think it's actually the former. I think that Grayson Lambert is just that good, and he has the experience. He has 17 games under his belt, 10 of which he's started. He's attempted 297 more passes than Bryce Ramsey. I think that alone just warrants him the job right there.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think he is the most experienced out of the three guys that were in the running in Fatan Bada, Bryce Ramsey, and himself, Grayson Lambert. But I don't know if this is the final decision from Coach Richt. I think this might just be this is who's going to take the first snap with the first team on Saturday. All spring and all summer we heard how close of a competition it was going to be. How tightly contested it was. How all of the guys were battling and really showing good streaks and bad streaks. So I think this could be kind of a filler type deal where we put somebody out there and we say this is our starter to clear up the controversy. But I still think that Ramsey and maybe even Fatan Bada could have a shot to slide in and steal this job from Lambert, even though he is the clear cut favorite.
Oh, you're right. You'll see, I think, at least 2 quarterbacks play on Saturday. I think Bryce Ramsey will play. He'll get to show what he can do. I think Fatan Bada might come in if there's enough time in the game. But I think it's realistically between Grayson Lambert and Bryce Ramsey. But I do think Grayson Lambert has come in and firmly cemented himself as the number 1 guy. I think if Bryce Ramsey was going to do it, if he was going to be the guy, he would have been the guy a long time ago. And, there might be some controversy midseason about who it should be, but I think they're going to stick with Grayson Lambert. I think Rick knows that you got to kind of go with one guy and just see what he can do. You have Eason coming in next year. It'd be a nice segue into Jacob Eason's tenure as the Georgia quarterback. I just don't see Bryce Ramsey being the guy long term, so there's no reason to keep him in there.
Yeah, definitely. I'd have to agree with that. I've been saying to a lot of people that there's no reason to give it to Bryce Ramsey, and then you have to worry about the hurt feelings and the favoritism accusations if Jacob Eason comes in next spring, next fall, next summer, and takes that job right out from under his nose. So I think this is the right move by Coach Richt. Kind of a segue, like you said, a good just kind of leading into the Jacob Eason era coming up at Georgia, and we hope it's very, very fruitful for the next 3 or 4 years to come down the road. But moving on a little bit here, Georgia, last year brought in Jeremy Pruitt, defensive coordinator from Florida State. Saw the defense, struggle a bit at times last year, but really seemed to get it together toward the end of the year. How do you think that defense is going to look in year 2 under Jeremy Pruitt?
I'm going to go as far to say that they will be the best defense in the SEC East. That might not be saying much, but I also think that they will be the second best defense in the SEC. Those outside linebackers that Jeremy Pruitt has to work with are something scary for opposing quarterbacks. You have Lorenzo Carter, you have Leonard Floyd, Jordan Jenkins, and on top of that, you have Davin Bellamy, who Jeremy Pruitt has recently stated could be the best of all of them. That remains to be seen, but you have 4 talented guys that can just get after the quarterback, and I'm excited to see what Jeremy Pruitt can do with all 4 of those guys. I think you'll see some speed packages on 3rd down where he'll let all 4 of them play on the same field at one time and just pin their ears back and go get after the quarterback. With that being said, there are some question marks. I do still think the defense will be great. I think there will be some growing pains just because the defensive line, I'm not sure that they can control the line of scrimmage against a team like Alabama. But if they can, Georgia's going to be something. Georgia's defense is going to be something scary and something to watch out for. I do think Trenton Thompson, he's a name that everybody knows about in Athens. He's the #1 player in the nation for the class of 2015. I think he will be starting by game 2. He didn't make the starting lineup for game 1, but I think that he is just that good. You can't keep him off the field, and I think once Jeremy Pruitt lets him, just lets him get after it, that he will find his role and he will become the player that everybody expects him to be.
Yeah, no doubt. I think this defense can only go up in year 2 under Jeremy Pruitt. And also, with, like you said, extreme talent at the linebacker spots. Leonard Floyd, Jordan Jenkins, Lorenzo Carter, all incredible talents. They have all SEC, possibly even All-American potential right there at that group. I do agree with you. I do think that the defensive line is going to have to, step up a little bit and show that they can control the line of scrimmage against, big physical power running teams like Alabama. But, at the same time, I also think the secondary, which, was kind of suspect at times, it, had its good moments and its bad moments last year. I think the secondary is going to have to really come together and show that it can be a Jeremy Pruitt secondary and it really can, take opposing teams' passing games away. In the sense that, it lets those pass rushers really do, what they can do and pin their ears back and go after the quarterback.
And I think that'll happen. Georgia's secondary really came on late, and they came on strong late last season. Dominic Sanders is the type of player Pruitt needs in every single one of his defenses. He's versatile, and he's just a playmaker. He's that Jalen Ramsey type of guy. And, he had, I think it was 3 interceptions in the bowl game. He's going to create a lot of turnovers. They have a lot of experience finally. They have guys that fit the mold that Pruitt is looking for. And also, this freshman class, they may not be experienced, but they are very talented. And they're guys, like I said, that will fit what Pruitt's looking to play. And I think they'll play early. They might not start, but I think they will play early and add some valued depth.
Yeah, definitely. I was reading today, Coach Rick said that they're definitely going to play. I think they said somewhere like 9 or 10 freshmen. All of them may not start, but they're definitely going to play. So that added depth really just gives you the opportunity to see, how good some of these guys can be, and maybe see some of that potential that we look forward to seeing in the near future. But I'm going to take what you said earlier, Kyle, a step further. I think they'll have the best defense in the SEC East. I also think they have potential to be a top 10 defense in the nation, in the country. Right there, they have the same potential, I think, as, an Auburn who just got Will Muschamp in, Florida State who still has some pretty good playmakers back there for them. So, I think they can be a top 10 or top 20 defense in the country. They just have to play up to it and play as well as everyone, knows and thinks they can play.
Yeah, I think Georgia's defense will be the backbone of this team this year. I think they will be the saving grace. They will keep them in games when the offense is a bit inconsistent, the offense turns it over or whatever. I think for the first year since, maybe the Van Gorder years, you'll hear that Georgia's defense is keeping them in games and keeping them alive. Moving on now, though, Nick Chubb stole the show last year. Everyone thought it was kind of the Todd Gurley campaign for Heisman. He was obviously he obviously had to sit out a few games for signing some signatures, and then he got hurt. But Nick Chubb allowed Georgia to not miss a beat. Is it going to be the Nick Chubb again this year, the solo act where he just carries the ball and carries the ball about 40 times a game, or are they going to split it up a little bit?
I think he might be built to carry the ball 40 times a game, but I don't know if he can carry the ball 40 times a game, especially in, SEC play and whatnot, and, some of those big physical teams they're going to see. But I do think it will be the Nick Chubb show. I think it will be, Nick Chubb for Heisman. The banners will be flying through Athens from day one. And I think, he's very capable of carrying this team. He's a humble young guy, a guy who's, low maintenance, doesn't ask for a lot, doesn't really, care for the spotlight, but, he's kind of been thrust into it, and he handles it well. I mean, he's, obviously a Heisman contender. He's arguably the star of that team, definitely probably the star of that backfield. I do think he'll get some help from, the Isaiah McKenzie's of the world and, Keith Marshall and some of those other guys they got back there. They got a host of great backs back there in the backfield. So I just think Nick Chubb's going to carry this team, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do to help Lambert and that offense open up the passing game as well.
I'm gonna play a little bit of a devil's advocate to your statement. I think that if Nick Chubb is in the Heisman race, if he's up around 1,500 yards, 1,600 yards or more by the end of the season, Georgia fans are going to be disappointed in the play of the team, because I think, first of all, you want to know that the Georgia offense is balanced. I think you want Grayson Lambert to take some of that pressure off Nick Chubb. You don't want him to have to carry the ball 25, 35 times a game. And I think also you want, like you said, you want Nick Chubb to sit on the sideline for a little bit and allow Keith Marshall, Sony Michel, and all the great backs they have run the ball and do their thing for a little bit. I'm really excited to see what Sony Michel can do. He showed some flashes of greatness last year. He got a little banged up and nicked up, but I think he'll be back. He's that electric back that Georgia needs, and he complements Nick Chubb very well.
Yeah, definitely. I'd have to agree with that. I think he is one of your home run hitters you have in the backfield. But looking at that backfield, you got a couple back there, so you can't be disappointed with really anybody you put out there. But he's definitely one of the guys, and Sony Michel, one of the guys that's going to have to step up for him this year. I think they're going to have a couple of guys step up if they want to win the SEC and possibly look at a playoff berth come January. So, Kyle, who do you thinking is, going to step up or is going to have to step up for this team to, reach its potential?
One guy I really think needs to step up is Jay Rome. Jay Rome came in as a highly touted tight end, 4-star tight end out of high school out of Valdosta, Georgia. He had a solid freshman campaign. You saw him catch a beautiful touchdown pass in the SEC championship, but then he kind of tapered off after that. Injuries and whatever else has kind of mugged him for the last few years. But I think if Georgia's going to be successful in 2015, you need him to step up and be a solid third down possession guy and a guy that you can look to in the red zone, because Ryan Schottenheimer is going to look to employ a lot of two tight end sets. Also, Georgia's a little bit thin at the wide receiver position this year. They just lost Justin Scott Wesley to injury again, and really the only three other known guys at wide receiver that are go-tos are Malcolm Mitchell, Reggie Davis, and Isaiah McKenzie, and then also Jed Blazevich at tight end. But I think you need Jay Rome to step into the shoes that he was supposed to and really come on for the Dogs.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think he's going to have to be one of those guys to step up, and they're going to need tight end play, like you said, because Schottenheimer likes to use the two tight end sets, and it kind of helps set up the run game a little bit, as well as you can throw out of it and get big chunks out of that as well. But two of the guys I think need to step up. You mentioned them, Reggie Davis, or the young guy Terry Godwin. He was a highly touted freshman coming in, actually got drafted, coming in, chose to go play college football. And so I'm looking for big things out of this guy. He's a guy who can stretch the field vertically, has good speed, and then Reggie Davis, the guy who he's caught I think 4 touchdown passes in his career or something like that. But he's a guy who's going to have to step up, and they're going to have to take some pressure off of this running game, and Lambert and even Malcolm Mitchell, who is your clear-cut number one. But they're going to need somebody else to step up and make plays, and I think these two guys are the two to do it from the receiver standpoint.
All right, so Georgia has some tough tasks ready for them this season. They obviously have Tennessee and Auburn. They play Tennessee and Auburn every season, but they have Alabama on the schedule this year. Which of these games do you think will be the toughest game for Georgia this entire season?
They have something like a gauntlet coming up there for 5 or 6 weeks, where they get Alabama, Tennessee, Missouri, Florida, Kentucky, and Auburn all right there in a row around the middle of the year, and that's the meat of your SEC schedule. But I think starting with Alabama, that's going to show you from the get-go where you are. And, we'll get to see, kind of early, right where Georgia is, what kind of team they are, if they can handle adversity, because, you're going to face them against a well-coached Alabama team, a team that's going to come and, show you what they're made of, from the get-go. But I think that Alabama-Tennessee stretch has potential to be very, very tough. And then, Auburn at the end, I think, is going to be a tough game, a rivalry game, a game that could have huge SEC implications on it, coming down the stretch there in the season. So I think that the Alabama, Tennessee, and Auburn are going to be the 3 toughest games, in that stretch for the Dogs.
I think the toughest out of those three, though, is the Tennessee game. You know, Auburn and Alabama may be better teams, but coming off the Alabama game, win or loss, it's going to be an emotional game. You're going to have some guys that sacrifice it themselves, put it all out there on the line, and, you know, end up being a little bit banged up. And then to go along with that, you know, Tennessee always plays Georgia tough, always plays Georgia tough. And then on top of that, you play Tennessee at home. And Tennessee's a legitimate SEC title contender this year. You know, they finally have some stability at the quarterback position in Josh Dobbs. Some people are calling Josh Dobbs a Heisman contender, maybe even a Heisman favorite. So, you know, I look at that game to be one tough game for the Georgia Bulldogs. I think, you know, they end up actually losing that game on Rocky Top.
Yeah, always going to Rocky Top is a tough one. You know, Tennessee, that like you said, they do always find a way to play Georgia close, no matter what type of team they have. And I think that potentially could be a game, like you said, where they do slip up, a game that could, you know, hurt us in, you know, in the SEC as well as in the playoff picture. And, you know, also, was thinking, you know, Kentucky and Missouri also could be kind of like trap games right there.
Yeah.
You know, you have Missouri, Florida, Kentucky, so, you know, you're going to get Missouri, you know, kind of going to be on a down year this year, but they're, you know, they've beat Georgia a couple times in the past 3 or 4 years, and then, you know, you're going to get Florida, an emotional rivalry game, and then you got Kentucky, a team who, you know, wasn't great, but they weren't bad either last year, and so you're going to have to play them, you're going to have to show up, you can't just go and walk through and, you know, go through the motions against Kentucky. So I see those two as potential trap games, you know, with Florida in the middle. Don't want to get caught looking ahead, or you don't want to get, you know, be on too big of an emotional high or an emotional letdown, depending on what happens in that Florida game either.
Yeah, I don't think you can really look past anybody in the SEC, as evidenced last year by Georgia's season. You know, South Carolina was not what we thought they were, and Georgia still somehow lost them. Florida ran right through Georgia.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Yeah. All right, moving on now. Let's go for predictions. What's the season going to look like, Isaiah?
You know, I'd like to be able to say we're a shoo-in for the playoff, but, you know, good conscience will not allow me to say that right now. But, you know, I think legitimately, you know, an 10 or 11 win season is possible if we show up, we play, you know, play up to our potential. You know, obviously running the table is always an option. We haven't lost yet, so that's the bright side about that. But I think, you know, 11-1, 10-2, somewhere around that, you know, would be considered a successful year, an SEC championship game berth. Not going to, you know, say we're going to win it, but I think a berth there is always a successful year for Georgia. You always want to, you know, play for an SEC championship, and, you know, because that always sets the stage for something much, much bigger on the horizon at the end, you know, going down the stretch at the end of the year. So I think, you know, double-digit wins. I think anything short of double-digit wins may be seen not as a failure, but just, you know, a disappointment maybe. Yeah. So I think double-digit wins is the realistic expectation this year.
Yeah, I think it is every year for Georgia Bulldog fans, and rightfully so. But I'm going to side with 10 wins. I think they go 1-1 against the state of Alabama. I think they actually beat the Crimson Tide in Athens. You know, there's some instability at the quarterback position in Tuscaloosa, and I think, you know, Georgia, just because it's at home, both teams are about, I think, the same level of experience. I think Georgia takes that one. But then I think, coming off the emotional victory, playing in Knoxville, as I said earlier, you know, in a game that will pretty much predict the rest of the season for the SEC East, I think they lose to Tennessee and then go on and lose to Auburn, which will eliminate them from the SEC East title contention. I think Tennessee takes the SEC East.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to take a short, quick break right here, but don't worry. We'll be right back after this break with some more college football for you guys.
What's up, guys? We're back. We're talking a little more college football. Of course we are. We're talking that for the entire show. Still talking the SEC, though. You know, last year we saw the SEC, the mighty SEC, the king, get dethroned by the Ohio State Buckeyes. Isaiah, a lot of people are asking, can the SEC get back to the level they were at prior to last season?
I think they can, and, you know, I think it's just going to be a matter of time. It may not be this year. It may not be, you know, may not even be next year, but I think before long the SEC, it will be back to where it was. There's so much young talent coming up right there. You know, if you look at, you know, the Tennessees, the Alabamas, you know, they're not going to have to rebuild for too long. Auburn's going to have a legitimate program. Florida's looking to turn it around, and other programs like that. They're really looking to get the SEC back to where it was, and then it's just the brand of football that's played there. It's physical, it's tough, it is what football is meant to be played like in my mind and a lot of other people's minds. So I think the SEC will return as the king of college football. Maybe this year, but I definitely think it will be back within the next couple of years.
To me, I don't think the SEC was ever actually dethroned as king. I still think the SEC is king. Top to bottom, there's not a better conference. Ohio State and all these teams and all these fan bases can talk like they can come in and face the gauntlet week in and week out and still go undefeated, but it's just not true. If Ohio State is maybe the only team that could do it. FSU a few years ago probably could have done it, but aside from that, there's no other team in the country that could go in and go undefeated or even one loss in an SEC schedule.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. I think a lot of the football that's played elsewhere is more of, the finesse variety, the Oregons, the up-tempo, it's almost kind of cute football when you look at it. I mean, I know Oregon, they're a legit program and they do get in the trenches and work, but, some of those other teams out there, they, try to out-cute each other, it seems like, in some of those games. And
yeah, with the uniforms especially.
Yeah, the uniforms, they're calling up Nike every week and Under Armour and all these other companies trying to get, the coolest uniform, the coolest design, and it seems like they're taking practice time to do it because you hardly see any defense played, looks like, in a lot of other conferences. And then when they run up against, for lack of a better term, a brick wall in some of these SEC teams, middle of the road SEC defenses, they look like they've, never played football on the offensive side before. And, they just get run all over. These SEC teams, like Arkansas and different teams like that are running for, 200 and 300 yards on teams from other conferences who play that, quote-unquote cute variety of football. So I think that I think the SEC, like you said, top to bottom, is the best conference in football, just because of the quality and the type of football played there. It's physical, it's head smashing. It's what football is about.
Yeah, another thing to me is the SEC has every year 8 to maybe 11 bowl eligible teams that can make a bowl or are playing in a bowl. If you look at all the other conferences, this year the Big Ten might have, 5 to 7. The Pac-12 might have 5 to 7, maybe a few more. But aside from that, there's really no other conferences that could even come close to saying that they would have 11 teams playing in a bowl game. It's just as simple as that. The SEC is still the best conference in college football and will be for a long time.
Yeah, definitely have to agree with that. I am, an SEC fan myself. So moving on here, we're saying the SEC, definitely the best conference in college football right now, top to bottom. So who are some of those teams from the SEC who you think are national title contenders who could, show up in the playoff and really turn it out and make some noise?
I mean, I think you'll have some of the same people we talk about each year. First of all, you'll have Bama, you'll have Auburn, you'll have Georgia, and I think Tennessee can sneak in there too. I think those are the 4 that you can look at. I think Alabama, they're going to have the defense. Their defense is going to return to form. I think the DBs will finally be, solid back there and will be able to hold it down for the Crimson Tide. I think the biggest thing is figuring out the quarterback position. You got to figure out who it is first of all, and you got to figure out if he's the right guy. Mid-season, if he's struggling a little bit, pull him onto the next guy. You have, just a bevy of talent at the quarterback position at Alabama. Just figure out which one is the guy and go with him. Auburn, I think Auburn's going to be scary good this year. I think they're the favorite. Will Muschamp's got a hold of that defense. Last year, Auburn, couldn't stop anyone. I think this year, Will Muschamp will have the Auburn defense flying around the ball. I think they'll be competitive, and I think they'll keep Auburn in some games actually this year. And I think Jeremy Johnson is a better fit than Nick Marshall for the Auburn quarterback position. He can actually throw the ball. He's maybe not as fast as Nick Marshall, but I think he's more in the mold of Cam Newton, which obviously was pretty good at Auburn. Georgia just needs to gel. I think it comes back to the quarterback position as well. If Grayson Lambert, can put it together and be the guy for Georgia, I think they could go as far as they want to. Nick Chubb is the best running back in the nation. The defense is going to be the best Georgia's had in quite some time. I'd say since the maybe 2002 Sugar Bowl season. And then moving on to Tennessee. I think they're going to win the SEC East. I think they will beat Georgia. Do I think they're a better team? no. If Georgia gels, Georgia's going to be scary. But Tennessee, I'm just afraid with Josh Dobbs. I don't know if he can stay healthy the entire season.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you said about Alabama. The quarterback, for lack of a better word, controversy, is going to have to be solved for them to be, the team that we all, think they can be. Same for Georgia. They're going to have to find that, the quarterback that works for them, that the guys, grow around and they can gel with, and, they all gel around. I think, growing together and, becoming just, one solid team for Georgia is going to be a big thing for them. Auburn's a team unlike a lot of people, I'm skeptical about Auburn a little
Really?
bit. I think, I don't know, the defense might have, some growing pains in year one like we saw with Pruitt and Georgia, even though, you got Trey Matthews over there, some other guys like that who are, playmakers and they're solid guys. I don't know about the defense. I think, they could have some growing pains early, and that could set them back in their national title hunt a little bit if they slip up, once or twice early. But like you said, I do think Auburn has potential to be scary. I think Jeremy Johnson is a better fit for that offense than Nick Marshall was. He's kind of, molded kind of like Cam Newton in a way. So I do think that Auburn is going to be a team to contend with. And then Tennessee, like you said, they're a young team, a youthful team. They got Josh Dobbs, working hard out there. Some people consider him a Heisman candidate. I think that he could be, but I'm not sold on that yet. But and then finally, I had one other team that I was going to throw in there. LSU. A lot of people are saying LSU could be a team that could play for a national title this year. I know a couple of the analysts have actually picked them to be in their playoff. So I think LSU, with Leonard Fournette, they just picked their quarterback. His name slips my mind right now, but Brandon Harris, yes. They just, named him as their starting quarterback. He was a guy who, looked good at times, looked bad at times, and you never can count out a Les Miles coach team. I've seen that, many times in the past. You can't count them out. They call him the Mad Hatter for a reason. He's kind of, got that Steve Spurrier mindset. He's going to do whatever it takes to win. He'll, throw everything at you but the kitchen sink. So I have a hard time counting LSU out, and Leonard Fournette year two, as well as some of those other weapons they have on that team.
It's funny that you say that because I actually have LSU as my biggest pretender for a national title and even an SEC title spot. I agree they have a great team around the quarterback position. They have 17 returning starters, 9 on defense, and then let's not forget about Leonard Fournette, who might be the most talented running back in the nation. But the quarterback play was just too spotty and inconsistent last year. There were so many times where drives just stalled because of the quarterback play, or they lost games because of who they had under center. I know last year they were switching off between Anthony Jennings and Brandon Harris, so maybe one of the guys couldn't get a rhythm, but I'm just not convinced that they have the quarterback to do it. If you put in Cardale Jones or JT Barrett or one of those guys at the quarterback position under center for LSU this year, I'd say, wow, that'd be an impressive team and they could easily go all the way. But that's not the case. Brandon Harris is a sophomore. He's very talented. I just don't know if he has the head on him yet to be a quarterback that will lead them through the SEC gauntlet and to a national championship or SEC championship for that matter.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see how that could be a question and a concern for, those LSU fans and people who, are thinking about picking LSU. But, I think, for me it kind of goes back to the coaching and, like you said, returning 17 starters, that's not bad. A lot of teams would kill for that. So, and then around the quarterback position, very well, very good players, going to be well coached, I'm sure. But, I just think Les Miles, he might can pull one out of the hat and go back to something that we've never seen or haven't seen in a while and do something crazy. And they're sitting here come late December talking about an SEC championship run or even a playoff run. So moving on here, the state of Alabama. We've talked about it a little bit before. Auburn and Alabama, two excellent teams. We think they're going to have excellent teams this year. Who wins the state?
I said it earlier. I think Auburn's the better team in the state. They're electric. They have Duke Williams back for Jeremy Johnson to throw to. They have some young but talented running backs in Rock Thomas and Peyton Barber. But I think it all goes back to the defense. Last year they couldn't stop anybody. In their 5 losses, they gave up 38 points, 41 points, 34 points, 55 points, and 34 points. You're just not going to win many games like that. This year, I think you're going to see Muschamp getting that defense going in the right direction, and I think they'll have more scores that. Yeah, I don't think they'll let up 50 points this year, and I think they'll keep the offense in games and give the offense the ability to win. Like we said earlier, Jeremy Johnson is the right guy for the job. He is perfect for Malzahn's system, just like Cam Newton. And I think I think Auburn wins the Iron Bowl this year, and I think they go on to the national title playoff, and then eventually the national title.
I could definitely see that happening. I could see Auburn winning the SEC as a whole this year, definitely, especially if if that defense gels under Will Muschamp in year one, and that offense plays up to its potential, like you said. I do think Auburn's going to win the state of Alabama. Unfortunately for Alabama, they catch them at the end of the year when probably all the wrinkles will be ironed out, and on both sides of the ball, everything will be clicking. Everybody will be playing, up to their potential, right at where they think they should be playing.
It's in Auburn this year too. So
yeah, so at Auburn,
Jordan Hare,
yeah, at Jordan Hare, that's going to be a tough game. I guarantee for anybody who has to go there this year. So, like you said, I'm going to take Auburn, and I'm going to take them probably going to the SEC title game.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the Alabama quarterback situation. You have Jacob Coker, who was supposed to be the guy last year, kind of sat as the man in waiting. Transferred over from FSU. He was also the man in waiting behind Jameis Winston. Then you also have Jacob Barnett, you have David Coker, and Cooper Bateman. A lot of talent back there. Who you got, Isaiah?
I'm going to take Jacob Coker at this point. He's the guy. He has the experience. I think he's going to win the job eventually. It does kind of scare me, though, that he hasn't claimed the job already, being the guy who was there for a year and who also competed for it last year. I haven't really read too much into it, so I'm not going to talk too much about the other guys, but I do think Jacob Coker has the skill set to win the job, and I do think he will win the job. But at this point, I feel like it's gotten messy at this point. They're opening the season with 5 quarterbacks on their depth chart right there for the opening game on Saturday for them, and that's just messy. You can't realistically play 5 guys in a game and get an accurate look at all of them with the first team or even the second team for that matter, even though they're playing Wisconsin, a pretty good ball team they're going to see, so you don't want to be having the playing musical chairs with quarterbacks, pulling guys in and out every other series and doing crazy stuff like that. So you don't want to shake things up too much, but I think you got to get a look with a couple or even maybe 3 of those guys going forward just to get a look and see who you may want to go with.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult to get some different guys in there because they are playing number 20 Wisconsin. They're no slouch. I think the guy that you see starting in this Wisconsin game is pretty much going to be the guy all season. Last year, Blake Sims, he wasn't really the popular guy for the job. He wasn't the popular name. He was just kind of the guy that went in with a smile on his face, and just went to work. And he ended up being the guy for the entire season. There were times where a lot of Alabama fans were calling for him to sit on the bench and put in Jacob Coker, but Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin stuck with him because I think Nick Saban realizes that there needs to be consistency at the quarterback position. That's the position that you form your team around, and that's who everybody looks to for some motivation and inspiration. So I think you'll see Jacob Coker starting that first game, and I think he'll be the guy pretty much the entire season unless something goes drastically wrong and he throws 5 interceptions in a game against a Cupcake and they lose.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the guy you see on Saturday will be the guy who wins that competition and takes the job. But moving forward a little bit here, we saw last year, Ole Miss, Mississippi State both show some I guess gusto about themselves and blow their back a little bit and just be really surprises out there in the SEC West. Kyle, this year will there be any surprises of that caliber of the Ole Miss and Mississippi State of 2014 and last year, or will everything kind of fall back to normal? You'll see everything being kind of run of the mill out west.
I don't think there will be any surprises. First of all, because Ole Miss and Mississippi State have become household names in the SEC now. I actually think Mississippi State takes a step back to reality. Dak Prescott and Dan Mullen, hats off to them. They had a great season last year, but I think they're going to take a step back and, go 7-5, maybe 8-4, and not really be a contender this year. Ole Miss, I could see them being a contender in the SEC West again, or at least causing some trouble. That Landshark defense last year was something scary. They lost Bo Wallace, but they brought in Chad Kelly, transfer quarterback from Clemson. If he can stay out of trouble, and out of some bars late night, then I think they should be fine. And they should be going 8-4, 9-3, which I think would make a lot of Rebel fans happy. 2 consecutive 9-win seasons would be an impressive feat in Oxford.
Yeah, definitely. I think Ole Miss may have the better chance of the 2 Mississippi schools to make some noise. Chad Kelly out there, he was a guy who was at Clemson, went to community college, and now he's back, at the Division I level, looking to really make some noise and, shake some things up and help Ole Miss get, back to where they were last year, exceed that mark. I think, 8-9 wins for them is a realistic expectation. Same for Mississippi State. I think Dak Prescott's a great player, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he can carry that team the way he's going to have to for them to be as good as they were last year. I think they're, like you said, going to take a step back, get back to, some reality out there, and they're going to end up, I think maybe 7-5 would be maybe the worst they'd be, but, I think around that 8-9 win mark is realistic for them. But the biggest, surprise, I don't know if you can call them a surprise because they are a household name, would be LSU. Like you said, the young quarterback, like all the stuff we talked about earlier, is, has people high on him and also has people doubting him. So I think they might surprise a few people if they can come around and knock off some of those big names out west. But they're a big name themselves, so I wouldn't necessarily call it a surprise if we looked up in December and LSU was in the SEC championship game.
All right, so we got some high-profile newcomers coming in this year. Some freshmen. You got Trent Thompson, obviously, #1 player in the nation. Khalil McKenzie, he was the #2 defensive tackle in the nation, right behind Trent Thompson. He's a mountain of a man. Thighs on that guy are insane. And then you got, Calvin Ridley and a few other guys. Who's a newcomer that you are watching for, Isaiah?
A guy I like is Byron Cowart, a guy who I believe we tracked his decision on National Signing Day here last year, and he signed with Auburn. I think he has potential to be just great in Will Muschamp's defense. A defense that likes to get after it. He's a big defensive end, big physical guy, can rush the passer, also hold his own in the run game there. I think he's going to be essential to what they're trying to do out there in Auburn, and I think that he can really be a guy to push for SEC Freshman of the Year. I like this guy. I was hoping Georgia would get him, but obviously, he chose to go elsewhere. There were some reports also earlier in the fall that he felt like he actually made the wrong decision coming out of high school. He got caught up in the hype. So I'm interested to see how he responds. If the little adversity he probably faced going in early in his career right there, if that's going to break him and really hurt his potential, if we're going to see a transfer coming up after the season, or if he's really going to flourish and shine in that defensive system out there.
Yeah, he's probably just a little homesick. I don't know. Hopefully that doesn't hamper his abilities because he's a great player. Well, hopefully for Georgia fans it does hamper his abilities, but I'm going to go on the other side of the ball, actually, and stay in the state of Alabama. We've been talking about the state of Alabama a lot in this show, but I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley, the freshman wide receiver out of Alabama. They lost Amari Cooper this last year to the NFL draft, and a lot of Alabama fans were thinking, we need a high-profile guy, a guy that can stretch the field again, and I think Calvin Ridley immediately fills that void. He's an explosive, game-changing receiver, and I look for him to be one of the top receivers in the SEC by year's end, just like Amari Cooper was his freshman year. He'll pretty much make all the Crimson Tide fans and all SEC fans forget about Amari Cooper immediately.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's plenty of young talent out there in the SEC, and I'm honestly excited to see it. Being a Georgia fan, we do have some of it ourselves.
Yeah.
But I'm honestly excited to see just what the rest of the conference has to offer, and just what some of these young guys can do who are so highly touted. So moving forward a little bit here, conference outlook and predictions, Kyle. Who are you taking to win this thing and probably secure a playoff spot by winning it?
I think I revealed my hand a little bit earlier. I think it's going to be Tennessee and Auburn. I'd love to see the Dogs do it. At this point, I just see Tennessee being the team out of the East. It could change. It very well could change if Georgia does gel, if Grayson Lambert impresses and adds some balance to that offense. But right now, that Tennessee game is looking scary to me. Tennessee fans are going to be ready. They've been knocking on the door for the last couple years to make the return back to the mountaintop, and I think this year is the year they finally kind of do it. And then on the other side of the division, or the other side of the conference, like I've said, Auburn is just scary to me. I think Auburn's going to run their way right into the national championship game.
Yeah, definitely. I also chose Auburn over there, even though I think you're gonna see a little competition from the likes of LSU and Alabama, definitely for me. But on the East side, I didn't pick a winner. I think it's Georgia and Tennessee. It's two-horse race over there, definitely. But like you're kind of swaying my opinion a little bit, Kyle. I was firmly cemented with Georgia coming in, but like you said, Tennessee. I was scared of that game a little bit coming in, but I think you made me a little more scared of it sitting here, being in here with you for the past 45 minutes or so.
Sorry about that.
So I'm not feeling as confident about it as I was when I came in, but I'm going to stay with my pick. I'm still going to take Georgia over there. I think they'll beat Tennessee in a very, very close one up there in Knoxville to ultimately take the SEC East and get to face Auburn again in the SEC championship game.
I hope that's true. We're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
What's up, guys? We're back. We have a new segment for you guys this year coming up. We're going to do some SEC buy and sell. So, Kyle, first question is for you. Are you buying or selling the fact that some people are saying that Josh Dobbs is the SEC's best Heisman contender?
I'm selling that at this point. I just don't think that he will remain healthy for the entire season. I also don't know that Tennessee will have the record for him to be the top Heisman contender. I look for someone like Jeremy Johnson to be a better Heisman contender. I do not think Nick Chubb or Leonard Fournette are the best Heisman contenders either, just because they're running backs. I do think a quarterback is the best option, but I think someone like Jeremy Johnson, who will be efficient, who will have a good touchdown to interception ratio, and then also rush for a little bit, and then also a few touchdowns. I think he's the best guy for the best guy to win the Heisman out of the SEC. All right, Isaiah, next one is for you. Georgia will win the SEC East.
Well, you know where I'm standing on that. I'm going to buy that right now. I think Tennessee, like you said, is the best team that has the best shot to upset them going forward. But I think Georgia will gel. I think they'll come together, and I think they'll ride the emotion from the Alabama game, win or loss, to not to a dismantling of Tennessee, but to a win up there in Knoxville, and I think they'll win the SEC East. All right, Kyle, next one is going to be for you. The fact that Jacob Coker will start for Alabama all season. Are you buying or selling right there?
Like I said earlier, I'm buying this. I think that Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin will realize that consistency is key right here. I think that Jacob Coker is the most talented and most ready quarterback for the job, and I think that he'll start Saturday against Wisconsin, and you'll see him in the Iron Bowl and then the bowl game for Alabama. All right, next question is, a running back not named Nick Chubb or Leonard Fournette will lead the SEC in rushing. This one's interesting.
I thought about this one, and I eventually ended up having to sell it, just because Alex Collins from Arkansas. I think he does have a shot. I just don't know if he can do it. Jonathan Williams would have been my favorite pick. If he'd have been healthy, if he were a guy who was gonna be healthy all year, I might have bought this one and thrown his name around a little bit. But with him being injured, Alex Collins, he is a phenomenal running back, but I think he kind of thrives off of Williams having been there for a little while. So I'm going to sell this, and I'm going to say that either Chubb or Fournette will lead the SEC in rushing. So Kyle, last one here for you. Lee Corso and Kirk Herbstreit think LSU will play for a national title. Where do you stand on this, buy or sell?
I'm going to sell this one hard. Like I said earlier, I just don't think they have the quarterback for the job. Give me Cardale Jones and put him under center, and they're the number one team in the nation. But inconsistent quarterback play is going to keep them from winning even the SEC West. They're going to go in and play an Alabama or an Auburn, and they're just going to pick Brandon Harris apart. They're going to get after him, and I don't even know if he stays healthy the entire season, and then they might have to put in Anthony Jennings again, who was even worse than Brandon Harris last year.
Yeah, definitely. Some interesting points there, but we're going to go ahead and move forward a little bit. your preseason Heisman contenders. You know, there's a lot of guys with names being thrown around out there. You know, we're hearing some old names from last year. We're hearing some completely new names. You know, who are your top 3 or 4 guys, Kyle?
All right, my top 3 would have to be, first of all, the Ohio State quarterback. I don't know who it is, but whoever it is, I think is a Heisman contender. Whether it's J.T. Barrett or it's Cardale Jones, both of them proved that they can play at a high level and produce consistently. I wanted to be Cardale Jones. I love the guy. I love his personality. I love everything about him. You know, he's just a winner. You know, he comes in, starts his first game in the Big Ten championship, and they beat Wisconsin to a pulp. Then they go on to play Alabama and defeat the Crimson Tide, and then to top it all off, they beat Oregon in the national championship. After that, I'd have to say another quarterback out of the Big Ten, and that is Connor Cook. Connor Cook is probably the most pro-ready quarterback in the nation, and he has a great team surrounding him too. I think they could really compete with Ohio State for the Big Ten title and even the national title this year. And then third, I'd have to go with Cody Kessler. Cody Kessler out of Southern California. You know, last year he put up 39 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. He wasn't talked about much because the Trojans, you know, they went 9-4. They didn't have the record, but he was still in the Heisman conversation, even though they had 4 losses. I think this year the Trojans are going to be back in the national title race, and I think that will catapult him to a Heisman campaign.
Yeah, you know, I have to agree with your first one, the Ohio State quarterback, whoever it is. Both of these guys, you know, excellent players. Can really, you know, can sling it around, both of them. Both can move well with their feet and have the Heisman skill set as we saw all of last year. My second guy, I'm gonna take Trevon Boykin, the old dog, kind of the old, you know, old kid on the block. You know, he's been there, he knows the reins a little bit. You know, I think him and that TCU team are gonna be special, and I look for them to break the NCAA record in total offense this year. And then finally, you know, I got kind of a 3A 3B slot going here. I'm gonna take Nick Chubb. I'm gonna buy him as being one of those guys who I think can have a breakout year, really can have a Heisman type year, and also a dark horse. Some people are talking about, others aren't. Deshaun Watson, a young guy up in Clemson, really looking to you know, help that program get back to, you know, where it was with Taj Boyd for a few years there. And, you know, I think he could be the next superstar in college football. He has the skill set, he has the personality, he has, you know, the toughness, the grit, the drive. He wants to be, you know, the best he can be at his position. And so I think we're looking at him becoming, you know, maybe the poster child of college football, you know, for the next 2 or 3 years to come after this season.
All right, Isaiah, time for some playoff predictions. I know it's early, but it's always fun. Who you got?
You know, when I did this, I had to sit down and make out a list of legit contenders and make out, you know, who I think, you know, has a shot, who's a pretender, who, you know, out of that top 20 really can do it. And so, you know, I'm gonna, you know, I had 2 polls made out. One sounds a lot better than the other does right now, so I'm gonna give you guys that one. I'm gonna take Ohio State number 1. I'm gonna buy TCU being the second best team. I'm gonna take the SEC winner, who right now I'm gonna say Auburn is in there now. And then I'm gonna take that the Pac-12 winner in the 4th slot in I'm gonna say Arizona right now. I think they're a good team, a young team with a new Solomon, a team who can, you know, really just spread it around and plays good football out there. So I'm gonna take the Pac-12 winner, who I think will be Arizona. I'm gonna say Michigan State and Georgia are probably gonna be the 2 teams left sitting out on the bubble at this point.
All right, I got Ohio State. I think as of right now, they repeat as national champions. And then I agree with you. I think TCU and then Auburn, the SEC championship. And then originally, I was actually convinced that Pac-12 would not have a representative, but I think USC is going to get that 4th spot. Wow. They have really grown on me. I think the Trojans are going to come back this year and get back to, you know, that Trojan glory. And, you know, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. Cody Kessler is going to lead that team. The defense is going to be elite with Su'a Cravens and Adoree Jackson in the defensive backfield. So look out for the Trojans. And then in the national title game, I'm going to put Auburn against Ohio State, which is going to be, I think, one of the best games in probably the last 10 years. And I think Ohio State wins that game.
All right. Well, some great picks right there from you, Kyle. I definitely don't have a problem with any of those. I think any of those teams have a shot at getting into the playoff this year. So one last segment before we leave you guys. We have a new segment we're gonna have called we're gonna have a little pick 'em here for each week. We're gonna pick a few key games we think are gonna be good games over the week, and we're gonna keep our records. And at the end of the year, one of us will have bragging rights over the other as the I guess the king of college football pick 'em here. So, first game we got North Carolina, South Carolina tomorrow night. Really looking forward to that. Hope everybody has big plans for that. So, who are you taking in that one, Kyle?
It's in Charlotte, in the Tar Heel State. South Carolina's got a new quarterback coming in. North Carolina's got the high-octane offense. I'm going to go with North Carolina, 37-24.
Yeah, I'm going to take Carolina as well. I'm a Carolina basketball fan. Why not get on the bandwagon right here? There's two new defensive coordinators and also two offenses who were just awful in 2014 as well. So I think this one's a little more high scoring than you predicted, but I'm going to take North Carolina 43-36 in this one.
All right, the next game is in Atlanta, actually, one that all of us are going to be watching, Auburn versus Louisville.
I'm going to take Auburn in this one. I think that Louisville, they haven't, chosen a starting quarterback yet, and I think Will Muschamp's really going to help let that defense capitalize, and we're going to see, I think, flashes of how scary and how dangerous that Auburn team is and can be to come. So I think it's going to be a close one, though. I don't think that Grantham's just going to lay down and let Auburn's offense, hang 50 or 60 on him in a game, a neutral site game that's, a big game to open the season. But I do think Auburn takes this one close, 34-27.
Does anybody remember Todd Grantham's last appearance in the Georgia Dome? Yeah, that was the SEC Championship where Georgia lost the last-second heartbreaker to Alabama. And what led to that loss was over 400 yards on the ground by Alabama. Over 400 yards given up by Todd Grantham's defense. I think it's going to be about that again. 400 yards given up to Auburn's offense on the ground. I think it's going to be a bit of a blowout. I say it's going to be 35-10.
Wow.
In Auburn's favor.
Wow. All right, real quick here, Kyle. We got Arizona State, Texas A&M. Who you got here, Kyle?
I'm going to take Arizona State. Texas A&M, they got some young quarterbacks in Kyler Murray, and, they don't have anybody quite like Johnny Manziel. Arizona State's a little more experienced and hoping to contend for the Pac-12 title. I like them out there.
I'm gonna have to go against you. I'm gonna say I think Arizona State might be a little bit overrated, and A&M. They grew on me a little bit today when I was doing some reading and catching up. I think they that up-tempo offense may help them out a little bit because Arizona State, their defense struggled a bit with conditioning last year. They gave up more points as the game progressed. So I think that up-tempo offense takes over, and I think A&M wins that thing 40-27.
All right, in a game between two teams who used to be Texas and Notre Dame, who you got?
I think Texas is just going to thrash Notre Dame in this one. I think we're going to see the beginning of the era of Charlie Strong and just how dominant Texas can be and probably is going to be in the years to come. And I think they thrash Notre Dame 48-21.
I agree. I think this is going to be the year they make their comeback. Charlie Strong is the coach I actually wanted to succeed Mark Richt. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen anymore. He's building an SEC program out there in Texas. He has all the resources. Texas is an uber-talented state, and they're going to run through a pretty soft Notre Dame team to me.
Yeah, I think so too. Who you taking? Alabama, Wisconsin. Another neutral site game. Going to kick this puppy off Saturday. Who you got in this one?
I'm going to take the Crimson Tide. I know there's some uncertainty at the quarterback position, but there's still the Alabama Crimson Tide. Nick Saban prepares his teams for big games like this. Wisconsin does not have Melvin Gordon. I'm sure they'll have another back, but it's not going to be Melvin Gordon. There's nobody quite like Melvin Gordon. And I think the Alabama defense is going to impose their will and show that they're almighty and ready to take on another season as hopefully the king.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think we're going to see a bit of maybe a defensive struggle, but I do think Alabama, their offense gets it together, gets it in gear late, and I think Alabama ends up running away with this one, 27-10.
All right, in the final game of our Pick'em segment, we got Ohio State versus Virginia Tech, the only game that Ohio State lost last year. It was the game that Braxton Miller went down and J.T. Barrett came on in, and they actually lost, but J.T. Barrett went on to rally the troops and win 11 straight games. It's also interesting because we'll figure out who is the starting quarterback for Ohio State. But all of that aside, who you got in this game, Isaiah?
Just a little sidebar. I hope Cardell wins the quarterback battle. He's a guy I really like his personality, and just like the way he goes about his business and whatnot with the 12 gauge nickname. But I'm going to take Ohio State in this one. I think this one is a game late. I think Virginia Tech playing Beamer ball up there. Special teams and defense is going to keep it close. They're going to keep themselves in the game, but I think Ohio State with those two talented quarterbacks, even if both of them do end up playing, I think that they'll win this game 34-27.
All right, guys, that's all we got for you tonight. I'm sorry Tom Brady never showed up. He called and said that he had to babysit. We'll continue doing this college football pick'em all year long, and we'll continue tallying our results and letting you know how we do. Also next week, we're going to preview some NFL, recap some college football, and talk about a little baseball. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys. Thanks for listening.